Yes, that's it. No, no, ma'am.
Good evening. Call to order meeting number 1741 of the Planning and Zoning Commission at 6:30 p.m. I ask that if you have a cell phone, either shut it off or place it on vibrate. We have a quorum. We have 5 regular members and 2 alternates. Commissioner Sullivan, you were absent last meeting. Do you feel comfortable of picking up where we are in the public hearing?
Yes, I do. All the information was provided.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right into the only item we have on tonight's agenda, continued public hearing. MMCT Venture LLC, General Development Special Use Permit, HIZ, in accordance with Section 500.5 and 504 Highway Interchange Zone of the zoning regulations to allow construction of proposed new commercial development, also known as casino, and site improvements at the following properties: 105, 119, 115, 113, and 93 Prospect Hill Road. Deadline to close the public hearing, July 17, 2018.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, again, I'm Dory Zamagletti, representing the applicant MMCT. We have with us this evening for the continued presentation Craig Lipinski, our engineer, Stephanie White, our landscape architect, Mark Bertucci, our traffic engineer, and Dan Thornton, our project architect. As you know, at the last meeting last week, we gave you a very comprehensive review of our proposed general development plan and a lot of the details having to do with the site plan as well, rolling it all into one presentation. We had an opportunity to hear comment both from this commission and from the public, and we appreciate all of those comments, many of which were quite positive. And we've spent the last few days considering those that require additional thought so that we could address them tonight, hopefully to your satisfaction. In addition to allowing us time to formulate our responses that we heard coming out of the public hearing last week, we also continued it so it would give us an opportunity to try and meet with the police chief to obtain some review and comments from him regarding our traffic study. So I'm going to report first on our status having to do with that, and then we'll turn it over to the group so we can go through the comments one by one. So subsequent to last week's meeting, we did reach out to the police chief through the town planner's office and I believe the first selectman's office, and we requested a meeting with the chief so that we could go over the traffic study and get some comment. We were advised that the chief has been short-staffed lately, primarily due to his deputy being out on training. He also had to be away himself for some time. We were also advised that the local traffic authority isn't set to meet again until the middle of July, and he would like to consult with the local traffic authority before providing final comments. So to date, we have not been successful in having an opportunity to meet with the police chief. And where does that leave us? Well, ultimately, it's going to be up to you to decide how you want to act on that this evening. But to help you in making that decision, I just want to make sure you're familiar with what we have to do with our OSTA process, because that might help you a little bit to get over that hurdle of having to still hear from the police chief in his final comments. So prior to OSTA approving our application for a major traffic generator certificate, we're going to need to obtain concurrence from either the local traffic authority or the chief that the proposed development will not have a significant impact on the adjoining road network. In addition, the chief is going to be invited to our OSTA Step 2 meeting, which we hope to have this summer. So the chief is going to have ample opportunity during that review process to participate. And in fact, he will be an active participant because we're going to need his concurrence at that point before OSTA will approve any certificate. So if modifications or adjustments are necessary either because of the chief or because of OSTA, and OSTA always has to follow the local review process. They don't pre-approve. They won't give us any certificates and approvals prior to. But if any modifications are required out of those meetings, then we'll likely have to come back to you for a modification of the site plan. Unless it's a very, very minor modification, in which case it might be delegated to staff to handle administratively. So ideally, what we'd like to be able to do is after tonight is if we're able to satisfactorily respond to all of your concerns, we'd like to be in a position to close the public hearing and have you act perhaps on the special permit and the site plan review with the understanding that nothing can really happen and this project can't proceed forward to the next step until we do have that concurrence and his review and approval. And understanding, we recognize just as well, that we may have to come back. Tweaks and modifications may be required regardless of what the chief says when we get to OSTA, so we might have to come back anyway. So I just want you to mull that over. Obviously you don't need to decide tonight, and I'm hoping that as we give you some more information as we work through the other responses tonight, maybe it'll give you a little comfort level, it'll give you some time to think about it, and then ultimately the decision's yours at the conclusion of the evening. So with that, I want to dive into the responses that came out of questions raised at the last meeting. Most of those questions were pedestrian circulation, sidewalks, traffic movements, and we're going to have our consultants respond to those, but there were a couple that I want to respond to first. Particularly, one question raised by the chairman involving liquor sales. So we were asked what our hours of operation would be for liquor sales here at the casino, and is that governed by state law, or is there some kind of exception that could be made for casinos, and how exactly is that handled? And we've done some research on that. Actually, the casino already knows, they just had to tell me, so. I learned that the Connecticut Liquor Commission is in charge of casino liquor permits. Casino liquor permits have the same cutoff hours as restaurants and bars in the state of Connecticut. So there's no service of alcohol after 1 a.m. on weekdays and 2 a.m. on Friday nights and Saturday nights. And there's no authority to extend those hours. Massachusetts is a little different, and perhaps that's what raised the question and prompted the question. In Massachusetts, the State Gaming Commission has jurisdiction over their liquor permits, and at new casinos at least. And the Gaming Commission also has the authority to extend those hours to as late as 4 a.m. There's no similar provision under Connecticut law, so we would be governed by regular liquor laws having to do with alcohol sales would have to cease on the property. There was another question raised by the chairman about whether weekend construction hours would really be necessary. We had talked about maybe wanting a little flexibility to work an occasional weekend if necessary. I know that there are some concerns having to do with residents in the nearby area and noise particularly. We talked with our construction team about that, and we were told there will be no regularly scheduled weekend construction hours. That's not worked into the regular work schedule. It's not contemplated. The only reason there would be any weekend work is if we ran into weather delays or other specific construction delays. So it would not be a regularly scheduled occurrence. It would be occasional, frequency, very occasional, just to keep us on schedule if we run into weather type related delays. And we would like the opportunity to continue to have that flexibility if possible. So having said that, and we're here, so if any questions come up and you want to talk about any of this further, please let me know. But having said that, I'm going to now turn it over to Mark Bertucci, who is going to go through a number of the traffic questions that were raised at the last hearing and hopefully address those to your satisfaction.
Thanks, Dory. Good evening again. I'm Mark Bertucci, Senior Transportation Engineer at Fuss & O'Neill, also a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and a professional traffic operations engineer. We did prepare the traffic impact study as I described to you at the last meeting and summarize the findings. And I just wanted to respond tonight to some of the concerns that we heard, questions we heard from the public as well as from you regarding some of the traffic issues. So first I wanted to talk about the traffic distribution. There was a question about how we determine where the traffic that is arriving to and departing from the site, where they will come from, where do these percentages that we have in our traffic study originate from. And we have a certain percentage, as you see up on the screen here, where the traffic's entering and exiting from. I mentioned majority approaching the site would come up 91, get off that northbound off-ramp and make the right-hand turn into the site. About 50% of the traffic will do that. 70% ultimately enter that right-in, right-out driveway on Route 140. Whereas more of the exiting traffic will tend to head south on Route 5 and go down towards exit 44, which is an easier movement, a right turn out and then a right turn onto the exit 44 ramp to exit. We are going to sign internally the site to encourage people to make that movement as opposed to getting back to 91 south by making the more difficult left-hand turn out, left at 140, left onto the southbound. For traffic leaving to 91 north, we do expect there will be left turns coming out of that driveway on Route 5 and heading up to 140. So that's kind of where we came up with these distributions. There are really four main rationale methods that we use to come up with the distributions. The actual traffic counts that are out there today, we look at the volumes on the interstate, we look at the volumes on Route 5 and Route 140, and we see where the traffic is coming to and going to today, where are the heavier movements, and the traffic is typically going to come from the areas that have more traffic coming to them from them today. We also look at the location of our site driveways. We look at the proximity of the site to the Interstate 91 on and off ramps. You know, they're obviously those are the main two movements where we're going to have the traffic between the site driveways and between the interstate ramps. That's the bulk of where the traffic is going to be coming from. I also wanted to note, as far as the distribution goes, and I mentioned this at the meeting last week, these volume figures have been submitted to the Department of Transportation. We did have a preliminary meeting with them, a scoping meeting where we sat down and we reviewed all of this preliminary traffic information. And these volumes were submitted to the DOT's planning department, and they reviewed them. They made some comments on them, which we've incorporated here into this figure, and they have approved these arrival departure distributions, which again form the basis of our whole traffic study. The next issue I wanted to talk about was a question that was asked by Commissioner Ouellette regarding the existing Cinema driveway. So this is the southerly site driveway, and we're proposing to reuse this driveway as our southerly access drive to the development. There is currently a traffic signal there. It's been in operation for a number of years. It's still operational today, even though there's no traffic coming in and out of the site. The question was, will it still meet warrants to even be there once the casino is in operation, given that we have another driveway to the north, and we're proposing a traffic signal there as well, and that's kind of where our main garage access is. Well, we did run the numbers, and we still are going to have a fairly significant volume coming out of that southerly driveway. The signal warrants were reviewed in the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and the existing traffic signal will still be warranted in the proposed condition with the casino traffic. It did meet the peak hour warrants, and there's also a 4-hour and an 8-hour volume warrant, and all of those continue to be satisfied. So that traffic signal will remain in operation in addition to the new traffic signal we're proposing at the main garage entrance. There were some questions and concerns raised regarding the traffic operation at the right-in, right-out driveway on Route 140. And Dan, if you could go to the figure that shows the off-site improvement plans there. Yeah, exactly. And advance to the slide that shows the right-in, right-out drive. So one of the questions, I'll talk about the entrance first. There's some concern about entering traffic, possibly backing up onto Route 140. So I wanted to explain this a bit. This is a free flow condition entering the site here. So the right turning traffic will be able to go straight in. They can either make a right-hand turn there to head around the drive towards the valet drop-off area and the rear surface lot, or they can go straight straight into the main parking garage, where the bulk of the site parking is. You'll see there's no stop sign, there's no traffic control precluding that movement, so it will be a free flow condition into the site. And when you enter the garage, there's nothing like there's not a gate or any sort of payment or anything. It's free parking, so the traffic will be able to freely flow into the garage. So we don't see anything that would impede the traffic from entering. The traffic coming from the valet area and coming out of the garage has stop control. It's those stop bars there, so they have to yield to the entering traffic coming into the site. Another thing I wanted to note is, the casino traffic tends to be a steady flow. It can get heavier during the peak periods, like a Friday night or a Saturday night, but it's kind of like a constant, steady flow. You don't get a real huge spike like you would, say, if a concert were letting out or a school were letting out. So you don't tend to see like a tune of cars coming in and really, backing traffic up. They will be able to get in on a fairly free-flowing basis. Exiting the site, so this is a right-in, right-out driveway. So we have a proposed right-out movement there. Again, it's mimicking what's out there today. This driveway, as I presented last week, we're only expecting about 5% of our site-generated traffic to exit here. And this, again, is because the parking garage is, there's that exit at the top. Traffic is going to be signed to funnel up towards the top and exit onto Route 5. Also, the southerly surface parking lot in the site will be exiting via the southerly Cinnamon driveway. So all of the all the direction here is going to be to get people to exit. Anyone going back to 91, whether it be north or south, are going to be directed to exit out onto Route 5. This movement here is right out only. There's going to be a no left turn restriction. No traffic will be able to make a left here to head back out towards 91. So, how do we restrict people from doing that besides just a sign? Well, what we've attempted to do here is we've attempted to reconfigure this island in the driveway to make it more restrictive to a left turn, somebody turning left out or attempting to turn left into the site as well. There was some talk about potentially further fortifying this, I'll say, with a median on Route 140. So if somebody even did try to make that movement, they couldn't if there's a median island there. That's something that if the town were to require or DOT were to require, we wouldn't object to that. There is a driveway across the street. They also have a left turn out restriction. I don't believe they have a left turn in, but they do have a driveway immediately to the west where you could make a left turn in. So, that's something we wouldn't object to. There was a question about queuing. If cars are to queue up on this driveway, there are queues at the traffic signal approaching Route 5. So, what if there's a queue of cars that comes in and they can't get out? Well, as I mentioned, it's only 5% of the traffic exiting there. That's not going to be a lot of traffic, but if it were to be a few cars more than we expected, a couple of cars queued up there. The traffic signals on 140 are timed, they're coordinated. They're timed such that the lights on 91 and Route 5 will tend to go red at the same time to create gaps in the traffic on Route 140. So when those gaps occur, there's time for vehicles to be able to exit out of that right-out driveway. And I would say alleviate any significant queuing. I'm not concerned about a significant exiting queue at that driveway for the reasons I mentioned. If there was a queue, again, and somebody were coming in, again, they can funnel right, and if this were queued up, they'd be able to funnel right, head around towards the valet area. And there's, again, the stop sign is there. We wouldn't also be averse to putting a do not block intersection sign there as well if need be. One more issue I wanted to talk about that was raised last week was the sidewalk along Route 5 that we had proposed, which is shown on the next slide here. The sidewalk is depicted in the pink shading. So this sidewalk, again, I'll just explain, is proposed to connect the intersection of Route 5 and 140, head south along the west side, or the east side of Route 5, down to our new traffic signal at the main garage driveway. So the thought behind this is to provide some pedestrian connectivity between the casino and some of the retail establishments that exist on the four corners of this intersection of Route 5 and 140. I know there's not a lot of pedestrian traffic out there today, but the thought is with the casino there may be some more people who might want to go from travel back and forth, and we feel if that's there, this would provide a safe movement for them to get up to the intersection. At this intersection, we are proposing to modify the traffic signal. We need to accommodate our road widening. The modified traffic signal would have pedestrian signal equipment. So pedestrian signal heads, push buttons, new ramps that would help facilitate a safer crossing there. That's not there today. So this walkway was requested when we met preliminarily with the DOT, with OSTA. This is a concern that they had, and they asked us to take a look at this and find a way to provide some better pedestrian connectivity in the area. As Commissioner Ouellette mentioned last meeting, there's a move statewide, countrywide, really to have more complete type streets, less vehicle-centric, and more accommodating to other modes of travel like pedestrians and bikes. And the thought is that this would help to do that. I'll note that most of you are aware that the Capital Region Council of Governments, CROG, is undergoing a corridor study right now of the entire Route 5 corridor between the Enfield town line and the South Windsor town line. And one of the main things they're going to be looking at as part of that study is better access for alternative modes of traffic and pedestrian movement, bicycle movement. They're going to be looking at the potential to add sidewalks along portions of this corridor. And we think this area, which is focused with a lot of retail, will be one they'll be looking at closely as well. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Dan, and I can answer any additional questions you might have after he's done talking. But Dan's going to talk about the internal site circulation and some of the comments that were raised at the last meeting. Thank you.
Good evening all. For the record, my name is Dan Thornton. I'm an architect with JCJ Architecture and project architect for MMCT Casino. One of the concerns that was raised at our last hearing was to go into a little more detail about the circulation, and specifically pedestrian circulation at the south end of the site. So I'd like to start there. This is the rendered site plan that we had shown at the last presentation, and I'm just going to zoom in to have a little more detail on the southern end here. So there are two primary entrances at this end of the site. One is an employee entrance that's at the east side or top of the screen over here. And the second is a public entry where I've left the cursor at the west end of the building, which is there primarily to serve the bus traffic that will be dropping off patrons through the bus program. So you can see here adjacent, we have 3 spaces for buses. Those buses come in off of 140, they loop up, park in these spaces to drop the patrons off, and then continue around and out the way they came. There are a collection of 42 spaces in the immediate area here that would be convenient for patrons to use and would be able to use that entry. But that entry is a 21 and over entrance only, so minors and people with minors would not be able to come through this way. This would be monitored by the security, typical security protocols, staff and cameras that will be monitoring to enforce that, because this entry does open directly into the gaming floor. So by regulation that requires us to keep minors off the gaming floor, that limits the access of this entry. The patrons that do choose to use this parking would be able to use the sidewalk to come along. If patrons did choose to park in the further lot here, they would be able to connect along the sidewalk systems that run to the inside to get to the entry that's right here. And similarly, if they parked in this lot, they would be able to follow that pattern. But really, these remaining spaces, which are 158 spaces between these two lots, would be more convenient and more preferable for the employees to be using. And it is likely that that will be the dominant use for them. Those employees would, if they parked in this lot, would again collect along the same connector, join with the circulation from here, who would be collecting similarly along this walk or directly to this sidewalk, depending on where they parked. They're coming up and over and into the walk system that gets them to the entry here. Now this walkway system is coincident to also the non-parking striping and fire lane access that the fire chief had recommended. On that related note, there was a question about does the areaway behind the building allow vehicle access and emergency vehicle access? The answer to that is no. It is not intended for that use. We have reviewed that with the fire marshal and his team, and we believe that they are on board with that and are in agreement with it. But it is not intended for emergency vehicle access. There was also a question about patrons coming from the parking in the Walmart side off our property through the connected access at the south end of the site, and do we have any intent to block that access? And the answer to that is no, there's no intent to block that access. We want that access to be active for all the reasons that it was originally set up, allowing cross communication between the site and allowing those sites to use the upper access or upper exit, and also to allow for emergency vehicles to come in through that path. So we don't intend to block that site. But we do think that it should not be a concern in terms of large quantities of people parking and walking over, for the very simple reason that the closest parking on the Walmart site is about 890 feet away from the minor entry that's here, the secondary entry that's here. That's compared, and that's the closest parking, compared to 690 feet, so a difference of 200 feet to the furthest spot of the garage. So the furthest spot in the garage is actually closer than the closest parking at Walmart. So human nature being what it is, people are going to go to the closer spaces just because it's more convenient. We don't want to encourage people to be parking on others' lots. We don't want to impose that load, but we do want to maintain the connection for all the reasons I just said, the emergency vehicle access and the cross communication of vehicles. So there was also a question about pedestrian circulation coming from the Route 5 entrance into the garage, and how those pedestrians would be able to make it safely to the elevators that connect into the casino. And we looked at it. We actually are proposing a few modifications to what we showed you last night, that we are showing a continuous pedestrian walk that comes down along the edge here. Would have a crosswalk and continue along to get to this spot. So these intersections would be signed to yield to pedestrians. We have created opening, visual opening in the wall that was here to improve driver visibility across to see pedestrians that would be coming in. And in order to make this work as a net zero change to the total parking count, we've reduced these spaces that were formerly 10 by 20 spaces to the standard 9 by 18. And on the upper level, we've increased the number of spaces on level 5 to get us to the 50 that we said was our original target. So we were able to do this without changing the total parking count, but it does make a net swap of 4 oversized to 4 standard, still maintaining the 50 that was our target. There was also a request for a little bit more detail on what the graphic displays are that would be at the garage elevations. And so you can see in the image on the top left a framing system that is containing the large graphic. This is essentially the basis of design system that we're proposing for the casino. On the right, you can see that frame opened up to understand how it actually attaches. So the banners are basically printed vinyls. It's a material kind of like a tarp, really, but it's a stronger material intended to receive the printing. They're fastened with J-hooks into the screen, frame, so they're in tension to give them some rigidity. They are not a like metal sheet or plastic sheet that is inherently rigid, but in tension, it becomes much stronger of a pipe, more resistant to movement. And then after it's hooked in and tightened and locked into place, they close the frame over, and so you can see the clean lined edge around it. So these are 2 examples. The top a little bit closer to the frame to see the detail, the bottom in an application on a parking garage, so we want to show that as kind of context. Not our garage design per se, but a similar concept. And then at right, we can also just see the way the system opens up and closes on a larger scale. The materials of the banners are pretty durable. They can last several years in good use with proper installation. Our intent for this would be that some of the banners will be nearly permanent. They're there for their life service, while others would be changed periodically as events of interest dictate the change of them. The final area that I want to go into a little bit more detail tonight is regarding the garage height and plantings. There were several people who raised questions about the relationship of the landscaping to Route 5, the relationship of the garage to Route 5, and how the height of this building relates to its context. So I'd like to go through that in a little more detail. The first thing that I'd like to point out is that Route 5 does slope quite a bit from the top of the hill right by the casino area of our site and sloping down to a flatter area at the intersection of Route 140 and Route 5. So in kind of order of magnitude, the high point of the hill is at about elevation 165, and that low point of the hill down at Route 140 is about 129. So we're looking at over a 35-foot grade change from one end of the property to the other. The underlying B1 height restrictions of the area would be a 4-story building and 50 feet. the proposed HIZ values are 5-story as measured from Route 5 and 65 feet as measured from Route 5, which is in keeping with the way the HIZ zone was written for acceptable parameters. In our case, we've talked about a 5-level parking garage, but an item to remember is that that 5th level is the roof of the garage. So the mass of the building is comparable to a 4-story building, but there are, the light poles to the garage and the projecting towers and stair enclosures that do raise its height above that typical 4-story level. So the overall building is proposed at 53'7" to the parapet and 72'2" to the highest point of the building overall, but that is not taking into account its relationship to Route 5 at all. And you'll see that when we come over to include the topography of Route 5 going by, because remember we have this 15-foot areaway that we've carved out so our building can be lower sunk into the hill. At the high end of the site, we're only about 20 feet tall for the mass of the building and 38'8" to the high point. At the other end, at our tallest extreme, we are about 29'7" above grade and 48'2" to the very highest point. And you can see that from another direction in these series of sections that we've cut across the site. So I'm going to start here at the high end of the hill by the casino, which is this lower section, and then we'll march up, moving from the right to the left through the casino and into the garage. And you can see that at the high end of the site, Route 5 is actually well above our building. It levels out to be about even with the building as we cross from casino to garage. And then because the garage is taller than the adjacent casino, we are above eye level for the garage for its entirety, but starting at about a 1.5-story mass and then extending to basically a 2.5-story mass plus these pop-ups above. So overall, we feel that we're well within that intent of 5 stories above Route 5 for the entirety of the project, and well within the height restrictions as measured from Route 5. There was also a question about the plantings that would be occurring along the edge and what size those would be and how long they would take to get to maturity. The typical height for those plants coming straight out of the nursery is 24 inches to 30 inches tall. That's just typically what they're grown to when they ship out. We expect it would be about a 5-year term for those to come to full maturity, the 6-foot height. Obviously, the plants, we can't control them to grow at a specific rate, but that's the typical, and that's what we would expect. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dory for a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Ian. Actually, before we go to closing remarks, I want to open it back up to you folks. If you have any further questions, you feel that we hit upon all of the questions that came out of the meeting last week, is something that we talked about tonight or that you had a chance to think about over the last couple of days occurring to you that you want to discuss right now, and now the hearing's still open, so now's the opportunity.
Start down the end of the table first.
I'm all set for right now.
Ready?
I'm fine for now.
All right, when you were talking about the traffic study and the right turn only out onto Route 5, your way to address the possible queuing up onto Route 5 up to the 140 up to the Route 5 intersection, is there any intention of changing that to allow right turns on red to alleviate some of that possible queuing, or is there not enough visibility to to accommodate that, to allow a right turn on red at the top? Because currently it doesn't allow it.
You're talking about...
140 heading east. Yes, 140 heading east at the intersection of Route 5 going up
the
the hill.
intersection of Route 5.
Correct.
That has not been discussed. I believe that is there because of maybe there because of a site distance constraint.
Well, I didn't know if through your site modifications, if that constraint will now be changed and allow for a right turn on red and alleviate some possible queuing coming out of that exit.
That has not been proposed, but we could certainly look at that. With a left-hand turn movement, you can do we redo the signal. You can enter a right turn arrow, which is called an overlap phase in there to help that movement go while the left turns are going. That is something we could look at when we redesign the signal. We'll discuss that with the DOT.
The other question, did you look at the possibility, in the public hearing, someone from the public spoke about the placement of that sidewalk on someone else's property that they would now be liable for maintaining it. Did you look at possibility adding that sidewalk to your side of the street and having a cross this way and putting pedestrian traffic already on that side of the street?
Yeah, our proposal,
instead of crossing there, crossing at the intersection.
There is a substantial, as you know, grade along the west side of the road. So we did look at that. It was not feasible to put it on our side of the road. We also think it's better on the east side of the road, just because you have that retail plaza there. You see there's a potential to draw some pedestrians from that plaza. So having the sidewalk on that side of the road is kind of a better location where we would be able to accommodate pedestrians. But as far as being on private property, this entire
it's within the right-of-way.
It is within the right-of-way. This light gray line here is actually the right-of-way line.
But snow removal and maintenance would fall upon that property owner, correct?
Typically, that is the case.
That's correct. I believe that your local town ordinances require the abutting property owner to maintain it. We have had some conversations with the abutting property owner following up on that, and I think that we might have satisfied some of their concerns, or we're in the process of trying to satisfy some of their concerns.
Okay. That's all for now.
You mentioned that 50% of the patrons are going to get off exit 45. I mentioned last meeting about people putting into their GPS. A lot of GPSs take you to exit 44. Is there any intention of putting a sign on the highway to steer people towards 45?
We have not discussed a sign on the highway. That would have to be something approved by the DOT. They have those blue attraction signs. So, that would be something that would have to be applied for with the DOT. But there is going to be obviously a large, the pylon sign there in front of the casino that will be visible from 91. So I think any repeat visitors to this casino, and there will be many, are going to find very quickly that the easiest way to get there is to take exit 45 and make that right, and that easy right-hand turn straight in. It's a free-flow movement. If they were to get off on exit 44, they have to turn left at the light under Route 5 and go through a couple more lights by Walmart and Big Y, and then come up. It's not as quick of a route travel time-wise.
Yeah, but the first time they get there, they obviously don't know where they're going, so they're just going to follow the GPS.
Yeah, but they can certainly come that way, and we have assumed a percentage will come that way, just a lesser percentage in this study.
Also, expansion. Have you guys taken any consideration for expansion? Because everybody knows here, the casino's probably going to get bigger. So right now, we're pushing the traffic to what, a D rating you said before?
It depends on the intersection, but everything is a level of service D or better, which is acceptable operation.
So I'm worried about, like you built the casinos in the middle of a field, middle of the woods, and they had problems with traffic at both those casinos their first 5 years. And they were built in the middle of nowhere. This is built dead middle in the heart of East Windsor. So I have a big concern about the traffic.
Well, what we prepared the traffic study for is only what's been proposed and presented before you. And as I mentioned a number of slot positions we had prepared the traffic study for. The last meeting, those rates that we've used have been approved by the DOT, and they're very conservative. We've actually done the study for more gaming positions that are actually proposed. We've used casino peak hours overlapping with adjacent street peak hours, which really isn't going to happen, so we were doubly conservative there. And we used some of the casino rates that the DOT provided to us, which formed the basis of our study, quite frankly, are higher than a lot of the recent casino counts that we've seen in southern New England and throughout the country at other casinos. So we're very comfortable, again, that this traffic study was very conservative as far as its potential traffic impact on the adjacent road network for what has been proposed. If there were some sort of future expansion, which is not being proposed, we would have to come back, we'd have to prepare another traffic study, we'd have to relook at the impacts, and there'd be a whole new application.
So if we get gridlock, we're just going to blame the DOT? Pretty much.
You're not going to get gridlock. But
Also, buses. You mentioned three buses are coming in. Is there an overflow parking for the buses? A lot of times you go to casinos now, you see a whole parking lot full of buses.
I can speak to that. So there are a couple different questions there. I'll start with the most straightforward, just where is the overflow? So right now it's set up to, bear with me, I'm going to zoom in. So right now there are the 3 spaces. There's also queuing space along the side here. There is not access like a big bus lot in this project, or place for many buses to be queuing out. But that is by design, because the bus program that we would anticipate at a facility like this is not at the same level of use that you would be seeing at the very large resort casinos. This is a regional destination, and we expect it to be a fantastic facility, but just the systems that drive how you do the bus program don't drive this to be one where we think we need a bus parking area or separate spot for multiple buses hanging out. We feel that the 3 spots with 1 overflow that we signed here is in keeping with the program that the casino will be running. And as a kind of further thing to understand, the casino is managing and coordinating those bus arrivals. It's not like there's any bus just pulls up whenever it wants. So that is item within the ability of the team to control.
And one more question. You mentioned the Walmart parking. Is there any deal with Walmart for you guys to park there at all? Or that's going to be private property? There going to be signs where patrons aren't going to park there? If it's full, they're going to park at Walmart.
I don't believe we have any existing cross-parking agreements with the Walmart site to the south. There is an existing cross-access easement that allows this site to send traffic out to their driveway system and up to Route 5, and also from their site out through our driveway out to Bridge Street. There, I don't believe, is a corresponding cross-parking easement in that document. We don't, to my knowledge, have plans to negotiate a cross-parking easement. We do feel we have more than required parking space, free parking space on site right now to handle the size of this venue. We don't anticipate that overflow will need to park over next door. We certainly don't want to encourage it. That's why we haven't, as you can see, brought sidewalks all the way up to that common property line there, just because we don't want to encourage anyone to park over there. We don't think it's warranted. It's not permitted under our existing arrangements with the neighboring property owner.
That's all I have for now.
You said that on the west end entry is 21 and older. You're going to have signage that would explain that to people before they get down there?
Yes. On the south end.
Signs there. Okay. And the, I was looking at the snow removal plan for the garage. If you need to truck that out, is the garage on that level high enough to get a triaxle through to haul snow out?
Yeah. Let me pull that up. So the short answer to the question, and if we need a more detailed answer, I'm going to defer to my colleague Craig, is that we do feel that there's adequate snow storage space on site for the majority of all events. We have a designated area over here where snow would be trucked to in the case of a large event where we can't capture it in specific designated areas, and we would lose a couple spaces, but in the cases where we have that much snow, it's not our peak attendance, and so we feel that there isn't a conflict there. And in terms of getting the snow off the roof to the spaces, yes, we're comfortable that through snow gates and management of snow removal, we can get it to the locations that we've designated.
And right where that sidewalk is close to the garage on the west side, is there a wall on that top part of the garage? So you can't dump snow over there?
There is a parapet wall along the entire perimeter of the garage.
So nobody would dump over on somebody's head?
Right. There would be specific snow gates for the locations where we want to dump the snow, and then it would be relocated to where the stockpiling areas are. And that is intended to be kept out of pedestrian circulation.
Sure. The other thing with the traffic study, it said 5% coming off 140. What about the towns like Tallinn, South Windsor, Ellington, Vernon, Enfield, Willington, Stafford, Coventry? I feel like a lot of them are going to be coming in that way. Otherwise, you'd have to take 84 down and take 91 north.
Right, so we do have, as far as you're talking about arrivals, correct?
Either way, coming in or out, I feel like the GPS from those towns are going to send you more back roads than they would up 91.
So, I mean, we feel most of it coming from the interstate. You know, you're not just looking at those towns, but also, you know, you're looking at Hartford, East Hartford, you know, some of the real population centers in the Hartford area are really going to be drawing a lot of the traffic to this. So looking regionally, you know, we think still most of the traffic is coming from the interstate. We've got 50% from 91 heading to Hartford, and 20% from 91 coming from the north, and 70% from 91 at this interchange. But we do have you know, smaller percentages that will be coming from Route 5 north, or 140 from the east, and also we have 15% coming up Route 5 from the south, from South Windsor. So we have accommodated that. It's just in smaller distributions. Traffic from those nearby towns.
Okay. Just seems like you were saying about the GPS, it's going to bring you on that direction.
Yeah, from those towns it will. But I think those percentages, although they're small, you know, when you factor that in, that's still several dozen cars, and you know, we do think that you know, that would account for the percentage of traffic that would come from those nearby towns.
Okay.
On the same area here, the exiting the casino and going eastbound on 140. Okay, you've alleviated the left-hand turn, but if person A is making the right turn out and then wants to make the left turn on Route 5, he's got a very short area to do that, and if no one lets him in that line, he's broadside on 140. Is there any way to put in from the highway exit? You know, there is just an awful lot happening here. You've got businesses on the left, you've got businesses on the right. You want people to cross 4 lanes of traffic or 5 lanes of traffic, depending. Is there any way to separate the highway access that is going to go left onto Route 5? So that when they come off the highway, they're in their lane to go left. And you can't get out of the casino and make that jump to Route 5 north. You've got to go around.
So you're saying traffic coming off the highway, off the ramp.
Right, and if the light changes to red, to go left on Route 5, somebody pulls out of the casino and also wants to go left onto Route 5, they get stuck outside that line.
So the movement.
And then they're broadside on 140.
Previous figure there, yeah, you can go to the other one. So your concern is this movement, making a right turn out, crossing over.
You're going to be crossing over
The
the
left-hand turn.
two to three lanes now, you know, because you're going to have 2 left-hand lanes, you're going to have a straight lane.
Yeah, I mean, that's a movement that could be made. You do have the roadway at this point is really, it's 2 lanes. The right turn lane is beginning to open up there, so you would have to cross 2 lanes of traffic to get across to make that movement to turn left onto 5 north. We do think it's a small percentage. They do have the opportunity as well to exit the parking garage and make a left at the traffic signal. As I mentioned, we're really going to try to direct people internally with signage and arrows and to get them to exit from that parking garage at the signal on Route 5. That is going to be the intent, but there could be a volume that does that. I think it's going to be a small movement though, and the tuning of traffic happens here when these signals change phase. You get the signal that will turn red to let the on Route 140 or Route 5 and at the 91 off ramp. It stops all traffic on 140 temporarily, so you do have those gaps to enable people to be able to make that movement out. That's the safe time for them to go and make the movement and cut over the left turn lane if they're going to do that. But we're going to try to sign it to encourage people to exit the signal on Route 5.
To see how that works out. That's all I have.
I have a question, Joe. I have a question on sidewalks. Why are you stopping the sidewalks at the intersection? Why aren't you going up to the hotel? Hopefully, you'll be so successful that people will want to make it a destination. Stay at the hotel, walk to the casino.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, what we've tried to do is provide some connectivity to that intersection to where the signal is, along our site frontage, as I mentioned. Beyond the limits of our site, heading south towards Walmart, the Big Y, and heading north, up towards up past the hotel, there is that corridor study that's going on, and they're looking at where it makes most sense to provide sidewalks along the entire Route 5 corridor. So, I think, that study is going to make some recommendations about what makes sense and where the walk should go. But as far as the scope of this study, we're limiting the sidewalks to between our entrance and the intersection of Route 5 and 140 is what we've...
Also down at the Renaissance, which has already been approved, there's a possibility that a 49-room hotel will go in there. And you don't want them walking from there up to the casino.
At this time, this is the extent of what we're proposing for the sidewalk.
Phase 2.
And it'll come.
So Mark, I have some additional questions about the traffic study. Can you go to the driveway on Route 140, the right-in, right-out driveway?
Sure.
So building on the concept of the scenario that Commissioner Sullivan was describing about potentially a patron turning right out of this driveway and desiring to go up to Route 5 to make a left turn. So that's going to happen during certain times of the day, and it's going to be congested. They're going to have to wait for a gap in traffic. We also heard about potential for people doing the wrong thing, making a left turn out, the concept of adding an island or divider. Potentially could restrict access to the property owner across the street. That's an option.
Sure.
But I'm wondering, because it's such a low volume, is that really a must-have to allow rights out there? Could that driveway be redesigned just to allow rights in only? You said you have internal signage encouraging everyone to go up to Route 5. So just eliminate the problem altogether and don't allow anyone to come out there. So it's an entrance only, right in off the highway. So that's one comment. Getting back, can you go to the intersection of Route 140 and I-91 northbound ramps? Yes. Okay. So during afternoon rush hour, the right lane.
I was going to say, you want me to answer?
Sure, if you want to. Sure. Yeah.
I think the main reason, one of the reasons we have this driveway is we have trucks that are going to need to make this exiting maneuver. They cannot, buses, larger vehicles, delivery vehicles, potentially an emergency vehicle, have difficulty maneuvering that existing cinema driveway that's got the hill and the reverse curve on it. So some of them are going to be directed to exit here at this driveway and then make the right-hand turn on the Route 5 South and then ultimately access potentially 91, that in that way. It's just due to the topographic constraints of our other access to the old cinema driveway, which we really, we've looked into reconstructing that. There's really not a lot you can do there to make that grade less severe.
Okay. I-91, the Route 140 northbound ramps,
Sure.
the intersection there to the west. Can you open that one up?
Go back one more.
Yep, no, the other one is good. Yeah, that one right there. So under today's rush hour, evening commuter hour, the right lane does back up. See, the proposal is to extend the markings there. The casino traffic is adding a lot of traffic to the right turn maneuver. But what a lot of people don't realize is it is a double right, and one of my concerns is someone desiring to go to the casino is going to get in that leftmost right lane. Number one, you can't make a right on red there, so most people want to gravitate to the curb lane anyway. And there's not, so if they do turn right there and say, oh my goodness, I would like to go to the casino, it's too close to that driveway. They're going to probably have to go all the way up to Route 5 and make that right. So you're adding additional traffic to the network unnecessarily. So what I'm asking you to do is consider even making that right lane even longer. So I think your traffic analysis suggests that the queue lengths are going to be X amount of feet, but that's assuming that there's an equal distribution between two lanes. That doesn't happen today, and that's not going to happen in the future. Most people want to be in the right lane because they know where they're going. I think the people who want to bypass the cinema altogether are going to be in that center lane, if you will, and turn right and just zoom on right out of there. So personally, I don't think that right lane is going to be long enough. I understand you're widening it.
So that's something, obviously, when we advance, we're going through the state, the OSTA process, and these plans are being submitted to DOT, and that is something we're going to be reviewing. We had a scoping meeting with them, and we talked about this ramp quite a bit. That is certainly something we can look at, extending that lane, and I also think signage will be important here to direct casino traffic to the inside right turn lane and direct traffic heading to Route 5 to the outside right turn lane, so traffic can sort of pre-position themselves as they approach the signal.
So the last concern I have at this time is the new site driveway opposite Eversource. They're putting a new traffic signal there. Can you open up a picture? schematic for that one. Yeah, that one right there. So that's opening, so the casino driveway, that's level 4 in the garage? So my question is there enough internal stacking within the garage? So when the light cycle's over, give them the green light to get out, it doesn't screw up the internal circulation of the garage and create gridlock within the garage, so nobody can get in and out. So that's enough. Are those lanes long enough to allow proper circulation within the garage?
Right. So you can see in the storage here for about,
This is 120 feet.
roughly 100.
Column here.
So 4 cars per lane.
About 120, so we're talking
4 to 5
probably
cars
5,
deep.
10 cars, maybe 11, 12 by the time, roughly a dozen by the time you get to the entrance there. So, you know, we think that will be enough to accommodate the maximum queue. There is some additional space within the garage, obviously. You know, there's spaces they had to filter into the aisles, but you know, about a dozen cars. The traffic signal itself, the operation, and the driveway across the street, Eversource, you know, isn't really going to be generating much during the peak casino times on the Friday evening and the Saturday evening. So we don't think there's going to be much in the way of opposing flow there. So when the light flips green, the traffic really should be able to flow out of there pretty well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do still have some final concluding remarks, but I'd still like to see if there's any other questions or comments that have come from the commission or from the public, if this is the public hearing portion of it.
Joe, we have a memo from Lenny.
So this is still a continued public hearing. Are there any comments or questions from the audience? If you do wish to speak, I kindly ask that you state your name and address. Yes, sir. Okay.
John Matthews, Melrose Road in Bradford. First of all, I want to offer my condolences to the business associates of Mr. Rappaport. A number of people here didn't need it. That's very well. Secondly, I have been supportive of the casino from day one, so my comments are intended to be constructive. I think things are still on paper. We got an opportunity here to do it right. So let me start. And Mr. Sullivan and Chairman Olet, you pretty much hit it on the exit coming out of 140. I really think that's the biggest traffic issue you have. And you know, I think of coming out of that and wanting to make a left turn up to Enfield. We're just looking at potential accidents here. So my suggestion would be to be bold and just close it down. Joe asked that question. I understand, you know, you need the ability to get buses out of there, but that's really going to be a problem. Perhaps you say buses only on that exit, no cars. Let me move on to, we're trying to encourage people to use other exits. So the garage exit. It's not clear to me, you raised the question of queue in the garage. It's not clear to me, is there a double lane coming up? So left-hand traffic has their lane and right-hand traffic has theirs. So they can
John, the plan did show that.
It does show
Yes,
double
it
lane
does.
out?
Yep.
Okay, my
Yep.
apologies. The picture panels sound intriguing, interesting, creative, but if you're on the highway and you're driving, is that a distraction for the driver, those panels? Are they changing?
That is not an electronic message board, it will not change.
It's not? It's a
Unless the overall panel changes.
Okay.
It's not.
So it's a
like
fixed panel, like the billboard would be, most billboards. Some change. Okay. So if it were changing, I would be concerned about the traffic and being distracted. Now, If you could put up the elevation view from the north showing the entrance.
Main entrance.
Main entrance.
I might have that on the screen today.
You've shown it several times.
If you want the one I've shown today, it's the east elevation. This one?
From the elevation view from the north.
I have a rendering that I've shown today.
There you go. Okay. Now, I don't know how to be diplomatic about this, but we're talking about a $300 million facility. And what I see here looks like fun, but you know, it's a pretty dated design. First time I saw that design was in 1950, and it was associated with fast food restaurants. So I think we can do better. I hate this. I'm not being diplomatic. I don't know how to say it otherwise. If you go north 15 miles, where your competitor is, and you look at the design there, it's just incredible how they have made that fit into that community. It's a $1 billion facility, but there's no reason why you can't make the front of this look like it's a $1 billion facility. So I'd like you to review that design, consider other possibilities, more classic features, perhaps a 3-story facade where you can put the name of the facility above it, and arches and columns. And that's my thought. Everybody has their own idea. But it is the purview of this commission to pass on the architectural features of the design. But something to think about. Well, it's still on paper. It's easy to change. So that completes my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone else? Yes, sir.
Bob Light, Jr., 80 Rye Street here in East Windsor. You heard a little bit of my history lesson last hearing. I'm going to keep it short tonight. I am a member of the Economic Development Commission. I'm on the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce, and I own a local business here in East Windsor called Images by Bob. I want to start with a very sincere compliment. On behalf of, I think I can speak for all the taxpayers and citizens in this town. We've got a panel here that's not only asking some great questions, we've got some expertise that needs to be, I think, noticed. One of them is your background, Mr. Chairman, as a traffic engineer. The second compliment I want to say is after attending a lot of these hearings and meetings for decades in this town, I'm impressed with the dialogue going on between these two entities here that is respectful and knowledgeable. Hear, hear. As a businessman, I have a couple of questions in regarding the studies that are being done and the questions that were being asked about expansion of the casino. Somewhere I would have liked to have seen the plans for commuter service transport from the new high-speed rail station that's going to be in Windsor Locks, getting vans back and forth between here and the casino. That's an important thing. It's really going to add to the economic development of our town in the future. As far as I was interested in hearing that you made mention of CROG, studying the corridor between the Enfield town line and the South Windsor town line, you should all be aware of also the knowledge corridor for which East Windsor is right in the middle of for the expansion of schooling, education, and businesses. The knowledge corridor, when I say we're not only between Hartford and Springfield, we're between New York and Boston. And the Economic Development Commission is looking with great anticipation on how we can be the center of that corridor and help advance the businesses in this town. You people I have to trust as much as I do the proposed MMCT casino here, because you really have the final say on not only is it the best use of the property that we have here, but is also the site being developed. It's going to promote the best for the taxpayers of this community, and I trust you exclusively in making that. I do differ just in a matter of aesthetics with my dear friend, also an engineer, John here, and it's because I've spent so much time at my son's home in Las Vegas. I don't like the idea of the glitz. I'm a country boy that's lived in the big cities. And I kind of like the more mundane approach for our little country town and our progressive rural community here. And with that, I hope that you can have, if you haven't gathered enough information tonight and gotten the straight answers, I feel like if I were this multi-billion-dollar business potentially coming into East Windsor, that I feel confident that I'd want to make it easy for potential casino attendees to get in and off the highways, and I think they'll do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir in the front row.
Charlie Smansky, 57 Rockville Road, also a member of the Board of Selectmen. I hate to keep beating the drum about the exit on 140, but a couple of concerns that I have with that weren't mentioned. And those are, I recognize that you said that you're building the exit with a curve that will train drivers to stay to the right. But it was also mentioned if that doesn't work, but there's also a possibility of building a median on 140. And building that median on 140, there are two fairly large businesses there, the Shell Station and Burger King. And when you divide a road, that will probably take their revenues in half. It does wherever that's been done. That's an issue. And we don't need to see in this town another vacated business at all. And you've got to generate a certain amount of revenue to keep those franchises going. The other part to this is, which is even more important, is that putting that median there in the event, for safety reasons, in the event that there's a fire, car fire, whatever it might be, ambulance service or police that are needed, and for them to come from, they'd be coming from the west, the first responders from the Warehouse Point Fire Station, and they would either have to go in the eastbound lane and hit head-on traffic there, or try to get across if there was a cut in there, and that's, quite frankly, not very easy with big fire trucks. So I just don't think that's a good solution for those very few, if ever, will decide to make that left-hand turn. I think we need to keep it open for those reasons.
Thank you.
37 Lowell Road. I grew like Mr. White, been in business in this town. In fact, it's been 50 years this year. I think that you guys hit the nail right on the head with that right turn up the hill on Prospect Hill. It's a horror show in the snow. Fortunately, their business is awful low. I think you're right on the money. What you possibly ought to consider doing is straightening that mess called, I call it a ski jump, which is the original entrance in there between the Walmart property and this property, and keep the trucks the heck away from the front of a beautiful casino. It'll be ideal for the buses and the trucks to go out that way. If it's too slippery, they got to back up because they can go right out through the Walmart property by the big Y. It's a beautiful entrance there, and it's not that steep. I think you're right on it. As far as the facade, leave it alone. It looks pretty darn good. I think the design team has done a lot of work. I sit on the inland wetlands, and our application, the information we get, which of course the public doesn't get to see, was 86 pages. I read every one of them. And I see your packets look bigger. Thank you.
Anyone else? Open it back up to the board. Additional questions for the development team?
I'm fine.
Everything's been, my questions have been answered.
Joe, what do we have? I mean, there's a lot of assumptions that have been made, mostly dealing with traffic. What do we have as a recourse once this is in operation, once we recognize that maybe something's been omitted, something that maybe needs tweaking? What's the process there?
Well, there is some provisions under the OSTA process where a traffic study is submitted, the development's approved, and if the projections don't materialize the way everyone anticipated, there is a way to go back and relook at that. And if that were the case, it'd be the owner's responsibility to rectify that. So that recourse has been in the state statutes for decades. Has it ever really been used? I'm not really sure. So there always is that recourse. But you do have multiple people looking at this. You've got a professional engineer preparing this. You have the police commission that will look at it. You have an outside entity, the state looking at it as well. You would think with all those eyes to be able to pick up potential fatal flaws. So you would think that there really shouldn't be any.
What I was just looking for, this is not set in stone. It's kind of a living document that if we finally, the end result does not work as intended, there's provisions to rectify it also.
Correct. Not easy, but there are provisions.
Construction hours, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Trips per day, truckloads per day, I know they were higher than normal at one time. We talked about the weekend hours, we kind of touched on it, but we didn't discuss it.
You're talking specifically about construction hours, or truck trips having to do with hauling material
Correct.
off-site?
So again, for the record, my name is Craig Lipinski. Let's see, the last time when we gave the presentation, I just want to make sure I give you the same exact numbers. We said that there would be, when most of the hauling operations are going to occur, it's going to be in the first 4 months of construction. And then at that point, it's going to be about 50 to 100 trucks per day. So that's what we're anticipating. And then unfortunately, because of the nature of the soils, most of the material that we generate is going to have to go off-site. We're going to have to bring in better material for the foundations. So that's what we're anticipating for the first 4 months.
Which general direction, whichever?
Yeah, so it depends where the material is coming from. It depends where the material is going to go to. And as I said last time, the good thing we have about this site is that we have good close access to the highway. So that it would be whichever, just like we would leave the casino, wherever the quickest way to get to Route 91 North, you would go that way, and the quickest way to go south, you would go that way.
And then hours of construction, you guys mentioned some Saturdays.
Yeah. So right now in our plans, in the notes section, we say 7 to 6 is the typical hours. But what we asked for is if we need to, and as Dory mentioned, as a result of falling behind schedule due to weather events or other things like that, periodically if we can work Saturdays, that would be helpful to keep us on schedule. We'd like that option.
7 to 6 or 7 to 12?
We'd like to get a full 8-hour day on Saturdays.
Also, Lenny had a whole, do I do that now? Or?
Sure.
Lenny had a whole sheet.
Actually, there was a revised memo from Len Norton that came this morning. I just want to make sure whichever one you're looking at is the correct one. May I see it?
That's what I'm about to tell you, Lori.
Okay, this is the old one. Do you have the new one, Lori?
Oh, oopsie.
Hold on, let me. I have a copy. We could make additional, or we can circulate it. Bear with me. Lori.
I thought, Dory, you weren't here when I dropped them off. Would you like me to make some copies?
Should I just read it for the record, or?
Go right ahead.
Okay. This is to Lori Whitten, AICP, from Len Norton, PE, regarding MMCT Venture LLC, 105 Prospect Hill Road, dated 6/19/18. In response to your request, I have reviewed the stormwater management report revised to 6/6/18 and correspondence dated 6/6/18 by Fussin O'Neill and received in my office on 6/19/18. Excuse me. I have also had 2 phone conversations with Keith Boudreau, from Fuss and O'Neill this morning. All my previous comments have been adequately addressed. Please call if you have any questions. That was dated today.
So I think the memo that you have predated that when he didn't have the benefit of the revised stormwater management report. That just did not get to him for his initial review, but then he got there and he satisfied.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, thank you, Joe.
I tried to drop them off earlier.
And then as a provision, the fire marshal will sign off.
Sorry?
Is it going to be a condition of approval to have the fire marshal sign off?
We would be fine with a conditional approval to have the fire marshal sign off, but I do believe we have had some conversations with the fire marshal already, and I believe we've probably addressed most of his concerns already.
Okay.
But no objection to a condition.
And then a condition for the police chief?
That will clearly be a condition of the OSTA permit, but if you want to put it as a condition of this approval as well, we have no objection to that.
Okay. That's all I have.
So Dory, let's talk about what it is you're asking of the commission at this time. So I think you stated earlier you were looking for the commission to consider closing the public hearing tonight. Is that correct?
Correct. If you feel that we've given you sufficient information to address any concerns that you have, as of right now, then we would like you to close the public hearing. We think that we answered the comments that were raised at the previous meeting, as well as the comments that were raised by both the commission and the public at this meeting. We would be happy if you would consider closing the public hearing, as long as you don't feel you need us to give you any more information, because you know once the hearing is closed, we can't provide additional information. But I hope that we did go a ways tonight to addressing the many concerns that were raised previously.
So my question is, so this is a multi-step process. Close the public hearing for the general development plan.
Correct.
And once that, we take a vote on that. Then there's the whole site plan approval process, which is not open to a public hearing. There is some potential discussion between the applicant's team as well as the commission, where we can hammer out some of more of the finer details. But that's where the lines get kind of gray. You know, I am totally not sold on the driveway of Route 140. But my question to you and your team is that a fine detail that could be hammered out during the site plan approval process, rather than the general development plan, which the public hearing is open for? So that's like the big elephant in the room for me anyway.
I believe, as long as you're comfortable approving the general development plan special permit, I believe we could go that way. The general development plan, remember, it sets our big picture design requirements.
Yes.
It's an overview of how the intricacies of the site plan will
We don't
come
normally
together.
get this level of detail for
Right.
a general development plan, correct?
Right. And again, as I had mentioned, for efficiency of presentation, and also because seeing some of this more minute detail, I think gives you some explanation for why we set our vision where we did, why we established these bulk and area requirements as we did. So that's why we presented it kind of all as one here. If you are comfortable closing the special permit hearing, voting on that, and then if you want to have an additional dialogue about the site plan, we can certainly go into that either tonight or subsequently. We didn't envision doing a whole, well, if you want to get right into it tonight, we didn't envision doing a whole separate presentation on the site plan because we feel we've covered most of that. I would say we'd incorporate the record from the public hearing for that site plan application, and then we would just pick up on specific questions you had and further dialogue on some of the outstanding issues, whether it's the exit on 140 or whether it be whatever. And if you think that we can work through those tonight, we can chat about it. If you think that it needs some more time and we push it off to the next meeting, then I think we have, do we have another date slotted? Lori?
We have a meeting next week.
Okay.
There's already
So I guess there's not another specific special meeting slotted for this application, but you have a meeting coming up next week. And if need be, we could come back again and chat with you at that point. But I think for big picture, for the special permit, I feel like we've ticked off most of the boxes. I do have in my closing remarks, I want to go through with you the special permit findings that are set forth in your regulations. It's really no new information. It's really just a summary of a lot of what we've already given you tonight. But I think that it would be within your discretion to go ahead and act on that this evening, as long as you don't feel you need additional information from us for that component.
Does everyone from the commission understand what they've just heard regarding the process moving forward?
Lori has a comment.
Yes.
Lori Witten, town planner for the record. I do believe that the GDP has been spoken, and they have described everything that is going to be needed for the bulk area requirements. We do require the traffic study, and we do require to show the ingress and egress and the traffic patterns. However, we also need to do that with the site plan approval. So I think if you're okay with that, and at least pushing the traffic study concerns to the site plan approval level, we could, and you're happy with everything else, we could close the public hearing for the GDP. And then there is also the fact that the traffic study may not be completed with the chief of police's comments until, what did I say, July?
Actually, July 11th, I think, is the date of his local traffic authority meeting. So it's still a bit of ways.
Right. So, I mean, and we do know that OSTA is going to have some comments and probably some changes, most likely.
Well, that's fine and good, but traffic is under the purview of this board as well. It's great to have the advice of other boards and commissions as well.
Right. Absolutely. So, but I think if you're okay with that, I don't see any reason to keep the GDP public hearing open at this point. I think they've met all the requirements for the HIZ and the GDP.
Before I ask you to have closing remarks, is there any additional comments from the audience? Dora, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So as I referenced, I just want to take you through some concluding remarks, really talking about what findings and determinations you need to make in connection with the approval of a general development plan, special permit, and in a highway interchange zone. The findings that you have to make are outlined in 3 different sections of your regulations. Section 504.1 and 504.3 of your HIZ section regulations, and also section 701 of your regulations, which are just the general special permit criteria. When I was initially putting my thoughts together for tonight's presentation, I thought I'd take you step by step through each one of those findings. But when I go back and I look at the town planner's memo that she prepared, she really did a very nice job doing just that. And a lot of the findings in those 3 sections are redundant. They're very similar. And I didn't want to take up your time with going through each and every one and just being redundant with my comments. So what it really boils down to when you review and evaluate this application is a few key considerations. You have to look at whether the proposal is consistent with your plan of conservation and development. You should look at whether it's compatible and in harmony with adjacent development. Does it demonstrate a high standard of quality in construction, detail, and design? Does it appropriately address traffic concerns? Is there adequate infrastructure and utilities? And does the proposal protect environmentally sensitive or regulated areas on site? If you review all of that, and you find that it does that it satisfactorily addresses all of those concerns, then I would submit to you that the proposal will not have a detrimental effect on public health, safety, and welfare. And I would think, in that case, you have every right to approve this application as presented. Now, we've talked extensively during our presentation about the high quality, what we believe the high quality of the design is. Now, I understand it's subjective and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and maybe not everybody agrees with the design elements, but we do believe that we have designed this to a very high level. Our architects have spent a lot of time and attention on the themes that are recurring throughout the property. We believe that both the construction design of the building and the landscaping on site are of very high quality, and we're pleased with what we're presenting you tonight. We hope that the majority of you agree with that. We've talked extensively about the traffic implications of the development and the improvements that we're proposing to mitigate any adverse impacts. we've talked extensively about the infrastructure that we're proposing to support the site and how we've designed the same to comply with all applicable, not just local regulations, but state regulatory regulations having to do with storm drainage, erosion controls, and such. And when we talk about infrastructure, I just want to touch really quickly back on sidewalks. What we're proposing with our sidewalk extension is a scope that we feel is relevant to the casino. We feel that it improves the town's existing infrastructure and extending much further than beyond what we've got, really we think is more appropriately dealt with under the Route 5 corridor study that you're currently undertaking right now. It's an extensive network. I mean, but to tell one individual developer that they should provide sidewalks from one end of Route 5 to the other, that's a little onerous. I think that the corridor study is going to look at that, and I think it's going to make some recommendations, and I feel like what we've presented to you is a really good start in the right direction, prompted by concerns raised both by this commission in the preliminary corridor study that we've seen so far, and also by OSTA. We've talked a lot about the fact that the only environmentally regulated area on site are the wetlands along the western portion of our site. We've noted that our design has no direct impacts, and we've also noted that we would receive unanimous inland wetlands approval for any activities within the 150-foot upland review area. There's no other regulated areas on site. There's no vernal pools, there's no flood zone, there's no aquifer protection areas, and there's no documented areas of state-listed, threatened, or endangered species on the site as based on the natural diversity database maintained by DEEP. Now, when you consider whether the proposal is compatible and in harmony with the surrounding area, the neighboring uses, it's really important to recognize that our proposal is a commercial use in a predominantly commercially developed area. There was a commercial use there before. We're looking to do another one, maybe a little higher intensity than that prior one. But you got to remember, we're surrounded by Route 140, Route 5, and the abutting Interstate 91. It's commercial corridors all around us. Commercial, and in fact larger scale commercial, is really what's intended and appropriate for this site. And we submit that it's compatible with the surrounding commercial developments that are in the Route 5 corridor in this area. Traffic circulation pattern has been designed to be compatible with adjoining developments to the south by maintaining and utilizing that historic cross-access easement between the properties. The development, we feel, is compatible with other surrounding commercial developments from a traffic perspective, because it was briefly pointed out, and I think it's worth mentioning again, that the casino's peak periods do not coincide with the peak periods on the surrounding road network. And that's important because that in and of itself is a bit of a traffic mitigator. We're not sending the bulk of our traffic to and from the casino when the bulk of the traffic is on those roads going to their other destinations along Route 5 and elsewhere. And we're also proposing, as we've talked extensively about, those off-site improvements that we think will, or that we're confident will ensure that the traffic associated with the development can safely and efficiently be accommodated at acceptable levels of service. And this, we don't feel, will have been an unreasonable impact on any of the surrounding commercial developments. We've paid extensive attention to detail in both the building's architecture and the site landscaping. We feel, and we hope you'll agree, that it creates very aesthetically pleasing development that's not only compatible with the neighboring developments, but I dare say would raise the bar for future redevelopment of vacant or underutilized properties in the area. Again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I think our team did a very nice job presenting these plans and putting them together. On the tone of compatibility still, the scale of the development is compatible with what's contemplated in this zone and other commercial development in the vicinity. Don't forget the HIZ regulations for consolidated parcels will allow an impervious lot coverage of up to 75%. And we're proposing with our GDP that it's to be set at 65%, correct, Dan? Thank you. It's also been noted by the town planner in one of her memos that the size of the building isn't even quite as large as a super Walmart down the street. So again, you do have some large-scale development, commercial development in that corridor. We're not even the largest on the road. We think all that, again, speaks to compatibility with the area. It's also compatible with our topographically challenging site, and we talked a lot about the grades on there. We've worked with those grades. We've taken advantage of those grades to minimize use of the large casino building, the roof mechanical equipment and the service yard, as well as even parts of the parking garage. And where the grade of the adjoining Route 5 is a little bit lower and the parking garage is visible, we've provided what we think is a very attractive streetscape with some screening to soften those views. We've been mindful of designing it to maintain the viewscapes from Route 5, and our signage package along the Route 5 side is in keeping with the signage that you would typically see along Route 5 and what exists right now. And we've really kept our wow factor with regard to signage on the I-91 side. All of these design elements are meant to create compatibility and harmony with the surrounding area. And lastly, I want to talk about whether the plan is consistent with whether the proposal is consistent with your plan of conservation and development. We submit yes, yes, loud and clear, yes. The plan recognizes the importance of retaining and expanding economic development to support the community with services, jobs, and taxes. I spent a lot of time talking previously about the development agreement between the town and MMCT. Your POCD recognizes the importance of increasing the tax base and employment opportunities and creating a regional economic vitality. Those are your stated goals. We feel that this development achieves all of those goals. Again, not only does it comply with all of your applicable regulations, it creates jobs, it expands tax base, it also includes a $3 million a year impact fee. It creates a development we believe of a very high quality to attract people from near and far to this site, to create a regional destination, to be a showcase for the town of East Windsor, different kind of showcase of the cinemas, and to set the bar for redevelopment of the vacant sites in the area. And based on the consideration of all of those foregoing and everything you heard in the last 2 nights of public hearing presentation, we think that this site is absolutely appropriate for an HIZ designation and the issuance of a general development plan special permit in accordance with the criteria that we set forth in our plans. We hope that you'll agree. Thank you.
Any final thoughts from the audience? Questions? Any questions from the board? Are we prepared to close the public hearing tonight? Okay, why don't we just take little baby steps? So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing on the MMCT venture 105 Prospect Hill.
There's a motion on the table to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The public hearing is closed. Are we ready to act on the general development plan?
One question. Sidewalks at Sophia's, have we figured that out?
No.
Who's paying for it?
So there are some areas that are gray, but as staff alluded, that it's not uncommon to have these details worked out during the site plan approval process. This is something we deal with during many applications during the administrative process, as well as driveway locations. But as we've heard, we're looking big picture here. It doesn't meet the general requirements. So that's what we have to ask ourselves by when we do vote. You have to consider that. Are we prepared to take a vote, or we want to sit back, consider it for another meeting? Personally, I'm prepared to vote on the general development plan tonight.
I am also.
I think we've separated the two. I understand it well enough to separate the general development plan from the site plan approval. So I'm ready to vote.
I'm ready to vote also, but with the consideration that on that traffic plan, we live here and we've seen what that area does on a day in and a day out basis. We want you to be successful. We don't want you to have problems with people getting ingress and egress. We don't want problems with people going through the town, in town. when it gets to all of your engineers and state and everything else, maybe it's going to take a little thinking outside the box to find a good decision within a small area. I realize it's going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy, you're not going to make everybody happy. But I think that right now, that's the most important thing, is getting people into and out of your site as much ease as possible. That's my 2 cents worth.
So if we are going to be considering a motion, just be prepared to state your reasons for the record, on the record, why you voted yea or nay on the general development plan. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the general development plan. Again, there was a memo from Lori. There's a motion here. I think the conditions.
Make a motion to approve the application of MMCT Venture LLC requesting an HIZ designation through a special use permit, general development plan for a commercial recreation casino use with restaurants, retail, bar and office uses, and associated site improvements, and to accept the bulk and area signage request as proposed to be located at 105 Prospect Hill Road, East Windsor, Connecticut, map 102, block 14, lots 001 and 008, and map 112, block 14, lots 003, 4, and 5, in the B1, R2, and M1 zones. Conditions of approval as may be modified. Conditions of approval on page 4, numbers 1 through 4, and 5 through 7. This is from a memo from Lori Witten, CZEO, AICP, Town Planner, dated June 7th, 2018. Although it says 2108.
There's a motion on the table for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Here are none. I call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll start out the dialogue why I voted. I have 4 specific reasons why I voted in favor of the general development plan. Number 1, consistent with the town's plan of conservation and development. 2, the development's in harmony with the surrounding commercial development. 3, it meets the regulations of the HIZ zone. And number 4, probably the most important, it's a much-needed economic generator for this town. Anyone else?
I voted in favor for this because it is a great economic generator for the town. I want it to be successful. It is along with our plan of conservation and development, and I have confidence in MMCT. This is not the first time that they've done this, and I believe that no one wants it to be more successful than they do.
I voted yes for the same reasons they both stated.
I voted yes, I agree with what Joe stated.
My yes vote was very similar, based on the economic development. I like the idea of making our town a smaller destination point, not nearly as large as Ledyard has become, or the other surrounding towns, but I think it will be beneficial to businesses in town. I don't think people will come just for your venue, that once they come to our town, they will spend money in other establishments in town, and it will help boost the economic development of the entire town.
Marty, you have any comments you'd like to make?
Bingo. I think sometimes bigger is not better. I think a mid-size or a handleable, manageable facility is, let's face it, older people don't like to walk forever, and so if you make it convenient, in, out, little day trippers, little shuttle services from some of the community developments that we have for our residents, I think it would be a nice destination point. And yes, it fits our town, it fits that space, it has the highway access, and I give it an applaud for the design. It looks very, very nice, and I wish you good luck with it, and I want to see more on the site plan, but let's get the traffic worked out, and I think it'll go.
And I concur with everyone said, especially with the lawyer said. I mean, I could just read it off of Lori's memo here, but I think this fellow commissioners have said it all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're excited to work with you.
On to the next step.
A motion for a 5-minute break.
Make a motion for a 5-minute, that we take a 5-minute break.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I want you to know you're all doing a great job. Very thorough. And I was really proud of you. It's asked a lot of great questions. Still have to fix it. So, thanks again.
I want to see one of them stupid 3-axle buses try to go up that hill in the winter.
All the axles are done, right?
Actually, the question is.
Oh, yeah, that's no problem. I'll put that damn big fire truck in there. No problem at all. Try 40 miles an hour coming in. I've driven it. That ski jump is the problem. They put that dumb island in the middle of that ramp. You know, where you come off of Route 5 and it screwed the whole thing up.
I've sat in traffic for 15 minutes.
Number one thing to go.
Oh, get rid of that. That's
Because people already jump on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've seen tractor trailers hung up in there and they had to get wreckers and pull them out just because of the island.
Close down traffic, we'll try and do an Austin Powers maneuver getting the way out.
Do his part.
So we got engineers for it.
Yeah. I'd rather listen to a truck driver.
Yeah.
I listen to the guy that's done it.
For the wetlands, those trees, those maples.
I don't know what they are. I can go home and get the details.
I don't know, are you allowed to cut anything in the wetlands, or never?
Cut anything in the wetlands.
So those trees,
Proper height and all that. That's what they should do. Because they got an Eversource right away through there, and that's the whole front of the site up.
yeah, it doesn't look that good from the highway.
Why not take care of it and make it look nice?
They got those 60-foot maples that I think they're in the wetland, but those are taller than the,
60 gallons of Mackenzie would take care of that. You can't
couple
do
copper
that.
nails.
10 copper nails and rip all the trees with your pen knife.
Just let a few people in there and tell them the lumber's there.
Yeah.
Wood's there.
Put it out on free.
We can't damage the wetlands, but I've got reports. I mean, I got stacks of
Well, there's a
reports.
difference between damaging the wetlands and enhancing.
I'm sure it seems like that's a pretty good.
The wetlands are
Between a highway and a commercial
totally
zone.
insignificant wetlands. If you read the report, they don't amount to ditties. I saw Eversource just went in there and tore the living stuff out of it.
Yeah.
So, and Corps, they have to report to the Corps of Engineers.
That's what I was wondering, because those
Like
trees,
that highway they
those trees
put
are about
down
the same
through.
height as the parking garage.
Yeah.
So if they're worried about it being.
They'll be gone.
It's gonna be cut off.
The chainsaws are cheap.
Yeah. We're going through a lot of them.
Chippers are fast.
I'll be waiting to see the extension is on.
Congratulations.
Please don't say it.
I know you're happy. Good job, Joe.
What station was that?
All of it. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I had a bit of.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's really great for our town. I'm Naresh Patel, next door, comforting. Really good for town, surrounding the town. It's really great effort.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Always support MMCT. That's kind of development we need in our town. I'm here as a comforting since 2007. There is nothing going on. This is the thing that we need. Thank you guys. God bless everyone.
I don't think we're going to go
Remember when you put South Windsor, in Manfield, one section, it was lighter, and then moved these people, they showed us right
So look at this here. It's like 70. Yes, this is your high. This is the road right now. So, adding a whole nother way. They're adding a whole nother
Sidewalk towards to company because we are also going to buy gym land and put another Marriott over there. My party wants to put another Marriott hotel, another 100 rooms.
Like the ones they did up there.
My comforting is already paid to the sidewalk because I like crank idea. That's really good. The sidewalk is distributed to outside. So if any older people, older couple, if they stay at the beach, they don't need to that, they just walk through the sidewalk. If there is
I think eventually some sidewalks around that.
That Route 5 corridor study they mentioned is, that's good.
People who stay at the finally, they are also their customers, MMCT.
Oh, that's okay. I agree.
But the new hotel, then, make sure they put sidewalks in front of it.
Get out there. Camera stall, get out there.
But at the same time, you know, that Route 5 started.
It's really great. Just if there is a sidewalk, little bit sidewalk over.
You're a legend in this town, sir.
4 lanes coming down from Oakland, 4 lanes coming in from South Windsor.
He likes your style.
So obviously, there doesn't even.
Yeah, it makes sense.
At some point in time, and which side are they gonna have to do it on?
Yeah, Frank idea is how we say it. I thought they are putting the sidewalk at the 5 and 140 intersection, right?
And you'll see the grass is worn out where everybody should be walking. Nobody's gonna cross the road, across the road, across the road. It doesn't happen. It's human nature. You're gonna let me jump a fence before you cross the road.
Human nature. Yeah.
That's right.
Go get him, buddy.
Any older people compete like MMCT.
They watch Stumbling Jumps at the casino and
Where how far they're gonna go.
If there is any way they can do that, in the long run, it will help to everyone.
That's right. Sure. Keep it close.
Yeah, if there is a possibility.
we just see that Walmart parking lot with all those buses. Yeah, that's
Especially when you're deciding whether they want to present tonight or not. What would you prefer? There's not much for them to present.
I know.
He's older. Are you leaving? Oh, you got water.
I got a strict air I got a 9-1.
Granted, you want to start.
I think there should be like a garage door gate kind of thing that says buses only, trucks only, it blocks cars or something like that. Or just.
That's the thing that
He was.
into. As they go on, say, oh, wait.
This is where we've had 7 accidents in the first one.
You're gonna have to.
Yeah. If you do it.
Hey, boss, I'll look for you at 10 o'clock.
hope they don't recognize it in the most of them.
I know I disagree, but I don't have to.
Guys, quick question. Is there any more voting happening tonight? Anything else? Maybe.
Imagine that's what's being discussed.
She wants to go get ice cream, so that's what.
No, I need to like do my
Your
job
delight.
with the package.
What kind of ice cream do you have?
I don't know what's going around.
Bring something back, but it's gonna be a little while before we vote, so you probably kind of go get us ice cream.
It's going to be a while before you may or may not do another vote.
Probably check a little bit.
That's a good question for the chairman.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
What would this be a vote on?
The site plan.
The site plan approval? Oh, that's a you could possibly do that too.
That's all professional credit though, so I'm taking right now.
Okay.
Politics and public.
We'll definitely hang around till the end.
Yeah. Okay. You don't have to.
Why is it ironic? Why is it ironic?
I'm saying I feel like I'm great.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
No, that one's yours. Your map. It's on the map. When you get like this, it's spread now.
I'll try to keep it to myself.
Mark, if you want, I'll juice it up to the same temperature as high school.
I thought we were gonna have ice carving down there.
We expected 200 bodies to be in there. They weren't there.
I know.
Make sure you get a glass. About 50. Yeah, almost 50.
When the arms start getting too short, they just
Well, I started on finish, I had to watch those. God, that windows, every year it's like every year it's like this. Like every year it's like year one. Year 6.
Call the meeting back to order at 8:30 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission, for the recess so we can all discuss what just has occurred. For the site plan review, our preference, if it's okay with you, would be to continue further discussion on the site plan review. What we've taken from you and from the comments tonight are really the issues that you want to focus on are that 140 access drive and a little bit of the sidewalk also issue. We'd like to look into those, discuss them further, and I think trying to do it on the fly tonight is probably not in anyone's best interest. We've spent a lot of time and energy on this application so far. Let us come back with some specific responses to some of those concerns. And then as we discuss the site plan review at that follow-up meeting, if other things come up, we'll talk about those then as well. It's up to you whether we continue this to your next regular agenda or if you want to set another special meeting, so we're the only thing on and you don't have the distraction of other matters on your agenda that you have to get to. We can talk dates or we can leave it to Lori to pick a date for us. But we would be available next week if you want us. I just don't know what your agenda looks like and what your preference is.
We have 2 public hearings.
2 public hearings, two public hearings, Apothecaries Hall extension and then the sign for the municipal signage ordinance or regulations. Neither one of them should take very long. But if you want to have a different meeting night, then I just have to find the next available room here or Scout Hall or wherever. I just don't have anything going on at the time.
Yeah, understood. I mean, this is all happening quickly.
Yeah.
I like to kind of reach conclusion on this is sooner than later. I think the applicant has gone above and beyond to do a wonderful job, by the way, and to address the concerns we've had to date. So I think I'd like to keep the process moving as expedient as possible, as long as we don't speed up too fast for them. So-
Oh, I don't think that's possible.
They sleep.
But I appreciate the sentiment.
But at the same time, I do have concerns with our next regular scheduled meeting this coming Tuesday, whether there may be too much on our plate. So is it possible that we go back and you can work out a date?
Of course, I just haven't had the chance.
I understood.
Maybe like a Wednesday or a Thursday or something like that?
Where the commission members are available, the development team is available.
I mean, I do think it needs our undivided attention.
Yes.
Are you still proposing this week or next week?
Not this week. I don't know. I think this week is too much.
Okay.
Too soon. We do have a meeting next regular.
The 26th,
correct. But our agenda is quite full already. The two other public hearings.
Oh, we did already have a special meeting scheduled for Wednesday. Is that the one you said you canceled?
Yeah, that's at the high school.
Oh, so is that the only venue that's available? Or is it not even available anymore?
Well, I could rebook it if need be. So next
I thought
week,
that was the regular meeting.
this room is booked every night, including Thursday.
How about Scott Hall?
I can look.
Park
I don't know. And then the following week is 4th of July week. I will be on vacation all that week, so I will not be here. So that leaves the 9th is the next available night here. But I could look for the following week for Scout Hall.
I mean, the high school, you probably wouldn't have to do all the mics and all that again.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't have to set all that
So
up.
the reason why the venue was large for public accommodation, the public is going to be invited to the next meeting. They have a right to be there, but
they won't be able to
they won't be able to speak. Right. So I can't envision that there'd be a packed house.
If we need, so that was the 27th?
Right.
The 27th is fine with us.
Is the
We had
27th good for you guys?
What day of the week is that?
That's a Wednesday.
I can do that.
As far as I know, yes.
I have to check with my wife, the social
So you have to check with your wife.
I'll tell you yes, but my wife told me no. And I'll still be here anyways.
So June 27th. So at this time, we will anticipate having the meeting on June 27th. I'll have to reschedule the high school or find another venue. So, but if we can't find another venue, we could go back to the high school. But we probably won't do the whole graphics and stuff. So.
I would suggest we don't go to high school because it'll be a hassle.
Well, that's the only thing
Wow.
available.
And it's brisk.
It was freezing.
Yeah.
We were all very chilled in there because there wasn't enough people to warm it up, so.
I would suggest not to.
So do we land on next week, the 27th, Wednesday the 27th, here at Town Hall?
No,
No.
right now it would be at the high school.
To be
I have
determined.
to rebook it.
Look, so,
Or Scout Hall?
so location to be determined?
Yeah, let's do that.
Or why couldn't it be here?
It's already
Because
booked.
booked.
It's already booked.
Yes.
You could use Scout Hall in the big room.
If we needed to be.
If it's available,
Yeah, right.
that's the problem, if it's available. So I have to look.
And that would be for 6:30 meeting also?
6:30, location to be determined, how's that? And if we can't find anything else, we can go to the high school.
Or across the street.
We'll just,
So how would the members of the public know where the venue is going to be?
we
Because
will
there's not
have
going
to
to be
post,
illegal, there's not going to be illegal notice.
we will have to post a meeting agenda and we can post it on the web, on our website.
Okay.
Maybe just say casino, or MMCT
Site plan.
Site plan
review
review.
meeting.
Yep. Interested citizens in the media.
Yeah. That's not a public hearing. Okay? So we'll just say location to be determined at this time. I should know by tomorrow where it will be. Tomorrow afternoon. accepted.
That's fine.
Are there anything else, is there any other big items that we would like the development team to go back and prepare for next Wednesday's meeting? So we already talked about some things. Is there anything else at this time that you want some additional clarification on?
Well, they could probably answer one question for me right now. I was looking at, we never received a copy of the infrastructure improvements that were proposed in your presentation, but looking at, I'm using off one of your landscape drawings, the way I just kind of, if this is drawn to scale, I just kind of drew a straight line where you're adding this new island here. I was looking at drawing L101. That's what I'm using here as a reference point. So what I did is looking at
Going out 140.
where this 140 exit, which seems to be the concern point. If I kind of continued your line coming up that island median, it almost looks to me like there is going to be now a new additional right lane on that entire, going up this road. Is that the way this is correct? Or
On 140?
On 140 going up.
The hill.
Is there, are you adding an additional lane going up the hill?
We're not.
You're not.
Lane there.
Because the way this is drawn, it kind of depicts that, but maybe.
He'll put it up on the screen here. Yeah. Go to T204. T204.
Okay, the one I was looking at was L101, which just kind of gave a little, unless you can blow up that exit.
Not clear.
Enlarge. The 140 exit.
140, yeah.
Okay, so where that island median is on your turn in, turn out, that looks like it, as far as it sticks out into 140, if you draw a straight line up, it almost looks like there's an additional lane, or it's actually going, is it going to funnel traffic? So you will have an open spot for merging there, or is that the intent of that, or?
It's just one right lane in,
Right.
one out. And this is just kind of a textured area for truckers. This is
That's how it is right now.
All right, so what it looked like to me then was that if you follow this straight up, it almost created an extra lane space, that this island was pushing you out far enough to where this was going to have a turn or merge, that traffic that continues straight up, that there would be enough room for merge here without traffic actually, that you're fighting against that traffic.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no,
The intent was not to add additional space, so you had merge space there.
So right, that right turn lane is currently
Because
open.
if you had that merge space, it may solve a lot of the concerns that are being proposed there.
Are you saying widen that bed to take out part of that second lane?
Well, I'm saying if that right turn out was a
Only right hand.
the right hand only had a merge lane that now was not queuing up against incoming traffic, or that was, what I was also thinking of, that would also solve the whole concern about somebody coming out of there and trying to cut across to go into the left turn on Route 5, because if it had its own merge lane, you could put up those plastic partition type barricades that would take somebody all the way up to the light there, and they're not going to be able to make that left-hand turn. They're only a right-hand out of there.
Yeah, the only concern with that is that
Do you have the space?
it serves as the right turn lane for existing Route 140 traffic onto Route 5. So.
Well, that's, I didn't know if there was an additional lane now created coming out of there, that this now became another, and you could almost have a double right turn lane out of there.
Right. Yeah, there is currently only one accepting lane on Route 5 side.
Okay.
So that wasn't the
intent there. Okay.
I have, while this drawing is up, I have a question. Can you zoom in on the valet drop-off area? So my question is, I'll just kind of point to it. what's the purpose of this? It's obviously intended for those who may want to come out of this, the valet.
Sure. So what, the way that this ends up working is that the patron arrives, they come in, they drop off their car, or they drop off their loved one or individual they're with that has to just walk straight into the casino. And then they continue out this way. Now, if they're dropping somebody off, they go through and they continue around to go back up into the garage. If they are coming through this lane and then realize, oh geez, I went to the wrong place, they go into the bypass lane that's here and can loop around into that same system. But assuming that they do want a valet, which is what the lion's shares of people are going to do here, they come in and they drop off their car and walk into the casino. The valet driver then takes this and takes this turn into the garage. This is valet only coming in, and they scan and park the car and then pick it up. And the valet drivers come out this way to rejoin and return the car. So you pick up and drop off the car at the same location. So there are two uses for this road, this little section. One is for the valets dropping off, and the second is for people who have made a mistake and need to return.
Okay, well, you also have that drawing up. There's this island, and it looks like maybe what is that?
This is an island, and I'll zoom.
Didn't know if it was like a kiosk or a security area.
No, what this is that you'll recall that there's a Eversource easement that runs through this end of the site, and there are existing there are existing transmission lines on this side, and there's an existing distribution line that actually runs across here. So this island is to protect the distribution line that runs across this area. So there's a pole here, there are bollards and sign to identify.
So that runs with the driveway, or it goes over?
It intersects?
Yeah, it runs overhead and not quite parallel to the drive, but there's a pole back here, one that goes here, and then another that's down on this side of the road.
Will you guys have signs, like a Mohegan, have signs valet full or garage full? We have kind of the same, we go there, you have big signs if it's full.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, that's a whole.
You do, you go there Friday night and valet full or garage is full. And
electronic signs?
Everybody's going, yeah.
Right. So the proposal as we're submitting it doesn't include electronic monitoring, sign and car count system, which is, I believe, what you're referring to specifically. There would, in the, call it fortunate event that the garage is full, because then it's exceedingly popular, as we've said, with oversized parking capacity. It would likely end up going into a manual management means of putting out more of the you see them sometimes in parking lots more than garages, but where it's just a folding sign that says garage full or garage near capacity.
So you would just pass the traffic down the front road?
They can park at Walmart.
That's where they're going.
So are there any more big picture questions, details that we want them to explore prior to the next meeting?
Super. We'll see you Wednesday then.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time here.
So with that, I entertain a motion to continue the site plan approval process to Wednesday, June 27th.
Make a motion to continue the MMCT Venture LLC site plan approval in connection with the development of a proposed new casino at 105, 119, 115, 113, and 93 Prospect Hill Road until Wednesday, June 27, 2018.
Location to be determined.
Location to be determined.
There's a motion on the table to continue the site plan approval. Is there a second?
Second. Got it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn, anyone?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second, all in favor? Aye. Good night. Thank you all.
Just so you know, there's a good chance it's going to be here because CIP is scheduled for it, but I don't think it was
If you check
scheduled.
the community calendar, there's nothing for this room.
Oh, that would be
Okay.
wonderful.
What day? Wednesday?
It'll be here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. You got your wish. You got your wish. It looks like it's going to be here now.
Is that for sure then it's going to be here?
Yeah.
I don't know.